Hey, everybody, what's going on? Today is July 5th, 2024, and you're listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. And today we got Jyunmi, Andy, and Brian. And what we're doing today is what we try to do every 2 weeks. We're pretty good about it at this point. And we do, like, what did they just say? So you might have seen in our splash screen there, I did a little homage to the debate that was last week. And, this is an opportunity for us on the show to just sort of go backwards a little bit, look back at the topics that we brought up over the last 2 weeks. And there's always so many, right? And then dive a little bit deeper into them, or to hit more news topics that we didn't ultimately get a chance to talk about. Or yesterday when we were talking about our, on our 4th of July episode, we were talking about U.S. companies. I remember, Andy, you said, like, I got like 2 more that, just didn't make the show yesterday. But today gives us sort of an opportunity to circle back for those. So that's what we have in store for you guys today. And I don't know, Andy, that might be a great segue for you. Do you want to talk about those other 2 companies? And we'll sort of start there.
Sure. So we did a show within this past 2 weeks about model orchestration. And there are a number of players out there that take slightly different approaches to doing this model orchestration bit in the sort of the pantheon of all the different kinds of companies and the services that they provide to the really expanding and highly populated AI ecosystem out there. And I wanted to bring your attention to Base 10. We talked about Vellum. Vellum and Base 10 were both members of the very same Y Combinator cohort. And they do similar things, but they're different enough that I think it's worth looking at Base 10. This is putting together a bunch of different models. So they have all kinds of models in this model library. But what I wanted to point out is the kinds of companies that are using Base 10 to run their production ops, if you will, or LLM ops. And you see Stability here, Descript, Gamma. These are companies that we talk about all the time because they're leaders in their particular application space. Patreon, the AI components of Patreon, I don't know what that is, but I know what Patreon is. And it's basically a monetization scheme for influencers and others. And maybe some of you in the audience have used it before. Writer, a very distinctive one. Bland AI. It's just impressive that they've put together a package that has become, a foundational ML ops kind of platform. So Base 10 is cool. And the other one that I didn't get around to talking about, though I've mentioned it on the show before, is a company called scaleai. And then this is the company that is focused on improving the quality and the maintenance of the data that's being used in training pipelines and other applications of data within enterprise RAG systems, for example. And they have an incredible array of customers using that platform to manage data, including OpenAI, Cohere, Meta, and others who are working in AI. They use scaleai that you don't hear about very much, and it's an enormous company. It's raised $1.6 billion. And so you can imagine that you've got these hardware infrastructures like the data centers that are out there, but then you have the data pipelines that are feeding the training routines and the sort of the bespoke repositories of data that are needed to operate an enterprise AI platform. And Scale's behind the scenes doing the sort of the data management and data generation for that. So they do synthetic data as well. Here's a fellow who you might recognize, Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google and of Alphabet. And he's an investor in a number of different companies and shows up in a couple. I think he's also associated with Assembly AI, a company I talked about that we don't hear much about. But Eric Schmidt, clearly in a bully pulpit to determine who the major players and winners will be in the world of AI, now that he's no longer, doing his daytime gig, he could spend his time investing as many billions of dollars in companies like Scale. All right, so those are those two that I didn't get to yesterday.
Well, you mentioned Base 10, who I had not heard of, and you were saying in there you mentioned Vellum. So I just want to make sure I give a throwback to not yesterday, but last Thursday's show where we did talk about model orchestration. You did go into a bit of a deep dive about Vellum and these different workflow systems that you can use, not just workflows, but that's certainly part of it, as well as doing evaluations and things like that. So if you want to know more, if you want to learn more and you didn't happen to go check out that show, that was last Thursday, and it's about model orchestration. So you can go check that out as well. And Jyunmi, do you know, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you know off the top what the episode number on that one is? I can look at the date too, which is fine. It would have been the 27th, I guess. So
He's doing the math.
He's doing the math. I see
The number of days.
Yeah. 232.
232. Fast math by Jyunmi. I love that. I love that it was your mute, and then the upper left look, and did I carry the 4? 232. And Jimmy's you've been adding the numbers too when you put the just for everybody's sort of background knowledge here really quick. We obviously have the live show, and that goes directly live to both LinkedIn and YouTube. But then Jyunmi does his magic on it, cleans them up a bit, and then a more polished version goes out on YouTube as well. And if you ever see those, you'll know the difference because that one has the episode number tagged to the end of it, which is always fun because it's fun to remember just how many of these we've done so far. Which, not go looking back 2 weeks, but something to just kind of keep in mind is our 1-year anniversary show is just about a month from today. That'll actually be on August 7th. So make sure you kind of scribble that in the notes somewhere if you want to hang out with us and celebrate 1 year, not 365 shows, obviously, because we do them 5 days a week, but 1 year of doing shows from the day we started. I'm sure we'll have some funny conversations or stories to tell about the very first week we did before we went live, which was definitely interesting and fun as we sort of tried to navigate the waters of brand new, fresh co-hosts and what that might look like for this show. So it's evolved a little bit over the year, and we can talk about that as well. So that'll be August 7th, our 1-year anniversary show, and just something to keep in mind, looking forward and stuff like that. It's something to put on your calendar. All right, Jyunmi, what did you have any companies from yesterday or news from Wednesday that didn't make it onto the live show?
News, essentially. That's usually always the one that I have to go back to because there's always so much great stuff that comes out, and we only have so much time. But the one story that I didn't get to that I was really excited about was the University of Maryland. Their teams came out with a new and improved camera inspired by the human eye. Now stick with me here. It's not directly AI yet. Okay. So they're computer scientists. They're always looking for, whatever they're trying to improve or new technology and things like that. So they came up with something called the Artificial Microsaccade Enhanced Event Camera. All right.
Oh, right off the tongue.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Just so easy to remember. But essentially what it is a camera that's based off of the traits of the human eye. So if you didn't know, apparently the human eye makes a lot of micro adjustments, right? All these micro movements to keep things in focus, to keep objects tracked, all of these kinds of things. And so that's how the human eye keeps whatever you're trying to look at and other objects, even in peripheral, in focus or tracking or noticing it and all those kinds of things. So these scientists are taking a page out of that book to apply it to a new camera system. And what this camera system is for is to improve the vision or the computer vision of autonomous vehicles, robotics, all of these kinds of things. And over the last few weeks, I've been highlighting sensor improvements, essentially, for robotics or embodied AI, essentially. And so we've talked about tactile responses as something that's being developed. We've talked about smelling sensors or nasal sensors kind of thing, so that can so you can get data information from scent and tasting functions and all of these different types of senses that can then be further developed and applied to robotics, right? So you just have a better interactive robot. And so this camera, because it simulates the human eye, it can do better tracking. It does much better in extreme lighting conditions, meaning very dark or very bright, right? And this is one of the problems with current autonomous vehicles' computer vision, is they don't have this ability to make those micro adjustments to keep all of these different objects in play. And the current computer vision, it basically tries to take pictures, right? And then the difference in those pictures gives them this data. Well, this is constant live information. So it's a departure from normal computer vision. And this should increase all of the accuracy. This should increase all of the performance levels and things like that, if this camera and if this science works out. So that's what was really exciting to me. So we've got all the different senses being worked on, and all put it in a robot, and hopefully one day we'll get a nice little Wall-E robot that will perform these basic tasks for us. Hopefully, cross fingers.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I mean, I love hearing about those types of technology and like how they try to mimic. I mean, we see it so much with AI, right? With the neurons and the brain and modeling and underneath that. So I know would you say it's ironic? It's that the more we get towards AI, the more it tends to go back to human language, back to the way the brain operates. Now it's like, cameras that act more like the eye, So as much as we get in these super intelligent AI and stuff, a lot of it does simply go back to the proteins, the structures, how the body works, RNA, DNA. It seems like these things are always coming up in the stories.
Well, it's also a reference point for us, right? Mm-hmm. It's easier for us to understand it if we make something that understands things the way we understand it. So I think there's some thought process along those lines as well.
There's also the point that evolution has proceeded over many millions of years and has created things that are, survivals of the various options of design. And so they kind of converged on some things that, are really, really like efficient and necessary. One of the other examples is, hydrodynamics. Like when you're trying to design, a submarine or, a subsurface drone, for example, the computer-aided design now is actually converging on, the shape of a dolphin. Because why? Dolphins evolved in order to be one of the most efficient maneuverers underwater. So like that, a lot of the things that are coming around, if you will, to human-related or intelligence, I think it's like that. And evolution is the process that's given us capabilities in the eye, for example, that we've only recently, as a society, begun to understand.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you've had a lab that's tested various combinations of beneficial adjustments, you might as well use that data set, right? So, I mean, that's the way to look at it. It's like, oh, well, these rods and cones, they seem to work pretty well for these forward-facing, hunters and things like that. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it also kind of plays into the environment or world viewpoint of Yann LeCun's object-driven AI concepts, right? Because when you can absorb so much more data than just being fed all the books in the world, and you can absorb everything that's in your spatial reality or whatnot, that can give you more context, sort of like what Justin is saying. There's more contextual AI to interpret things and give us a better response. So yeah.
Well, I want to welcome Carl. Carl joined us. So welcome, Carl. And one of the things I wanted to bring up really quick was a topic we had last Friday, which was talking about AI deepfakes. And to nobody's surprise, it continues to be in the news more and more. What I want to talk about is yesterday there was actually the UK elections. And in fact, I wasn't sure. I had to go look it up blank because I wasn't sure. But the UK election here, Sum is saying that right, Starmer is the new UK Prime Minister. That was the person that at least I had seen in the news that was pretty much projected to become the next UK. So no new news there. But that's not really what I talk about, because the show obviously was about deepfakes, but we're also talking about, in politics, in US politics with our upcoming election. Well, not necessarily directly related to yesterday's election in the UK, but in the UK, the headline is British female politicians targeted by fake pornography. And, this article goes and says from The Guardian, it says the UK stance on deepfake pornography is tougher than many other countries. It's already had a huge impact. Yet here you have, it's not just one person. It included the Labour deputy leader, the education secretary, the Commons leader, the former Home Secretary, the Labour backbencher, so on and so forth. So they said a lot of these, these cruder images, crude meaning as in like, not human looking, whatever, right? Crude in terms of creation, not whether it's crude work or not, have been around, I guess, for years. But now as the technology is getting faster, easier with AI, it's easier to turn these things into, fake pornography and things like that. And, unfortunately, this is in a country, obviously, where this is absolutely, of course, against the law. And they do have really tough standards. And it has protected some people, as The Guardian points out. But it just goes to show that this is something that we'll be consistently fighting. And, it's going to obviously be disproportionate towards, females versus males. I think we all kind of see that. And what people try to put out there as far as discrediting, whether it's female politicians or leaders, whatever it is, thought leaders, whatever the case may be, it's just going to be all too easy to do it. So this article is 3 days old. This came out on the July 2nd. So, yet again, we're going to see these articles probably weekly, and, what individual countries are starting to do. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of, what other stances they take. The article goes on to talk about how it seems to have, obviously unanimous support. So obviously their legal system works a little bit different than the United States, but it looks like this will come up again, and there's going to be tougher laws and stuff like that put in place. So just wanted to bring it up because we definitely talked about deepfakes last week. We didn't specifically talk about the deepfake pornography side of it, but obviously that's a huge part of it. Not just did somebody say something that was, as we were talking about Jyunmi, like slightly wrong. This is obviously the other end of the spectrum, where clearly the goal is to discredit, to dehumanize, to make somebody look like they're not, whatever you want to put into it, that they might, engage in such activity or whatever. And people don't realize how easy this is now to do. It's challenging. And then I feel for anybody that's a target of this, not just obviously, the British politicians, but as one of them pointed out in here, one of the women pointed out, she's like, I don't even know why they would target me, but it's deeply disturbing. And so I think that's the other side of it too, is like, what's the emotional take? I mean, even if everybody in the room goes, that's horrible, it's clearly not you. Clearly, as you were never there, it had nothing to do with it ever. It still takes an emotional hit to like see that and see that be out there online and stuff. And so, even if there's laws, even if the people get caught, there's still collateral damage from this. And I think there needs to be probably just as much done to support, in a lot of cases, it's going to be probably women, but support the people who are being affected and targeted by this, to make sure that not only the government have laws to go get the people who did it and make it harder for them to put this up online, but also what's being done to support the men and women who are targeted, who are going to have the collateral damage from this, to ensure that, they're being taken care of from a mental health standpoint as well. And maybe, by the way, maybe the UK does. I'm not suggesting they don't. It's just where my mind went to this. So wanted to bring that up because that was from last Friday's show.
I do want to, on that note, I think the big key here is that we this is just a small piece of it, and a lot of the deepfakes, if you really look at it, it's pretty it's done by, it's like very amateurish when they're created. I think that the thing that one take is, we definitely have to change the way, not just for us, but for any student going up, is that critical thinking needs to be so high in understanding that whatever you hear online, whatever you hear on social, you have to either double check or just like, you got to take everything with a grain of salt, because you don't know. And I think the most dangerous part of this is not the ones that, oh yeah, this person, pornography and so on, that eventually that's easily discreditable. It's like, oh, that person probably, like, it's a very stretch to do that. To me, it's one of those, it's the subtle things. So for example, like if a business leader or a CEO says something, but all it is not change what they say, it's just change a little piece of it. So I would say 90% of it true, 10% of it, 5% of it untrue, but that piece that was changed is such a significant thing, because usually everything's on sound bites, right? But that one sound bite, that makes it very, very difficult. That's when it's really tough, because then you're like, wait a minute, I don't know, that entire speech talking about the fiscal, let's say, like whoever is the Treasury Secretary or whoever it is talking about the fiscal update, and they say, blah, 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 we're going to raise interest rates by 3.5%. But what was put out is, we're going to raise interest rates by 2.5%. That 1% is such a big piece that it'll crash markets, because wait a minute, why are you putting an extra 1%? Like, right? It's that little thing that I'm really concerned about, because forget all this stuff. It's like, oh, okay, make them dance, make them do this. Sure. But if they make that one change, that has a bigger lasting impact, because no one can tell.
That's interesting. Right? You made me think about, all the facial cues that we interpret when you're looking at someone speaking, without changing what was said or what the import of that was. Imagine if you had an AI that could put in changes to the video of the face, so that the face was exhibiting cues that we normally interpret as deception or nervousness, or, just
sarcasm.
Changing the character of the person without changing the words or the content of what they spoke.
Yeah, that itself is a complete change, right? Like, it just...
So that's much of our language is our communication, I should say, not the language. The communication is nonverbal, right? We've always heard that, watching somebody talk, you get more, I guess, than just the words based on how they're doing it. I talk about this all the time when we're on video like this. I often say, when I was training people to do videos, lots of salespeople to do videos, and, they're a little meek or a little nervous to begin with. And, they just sort of talk in a normal voice in the room, and, they talk about what they want to talk about, and they're very excited about it or whatever, but you could already hear the difference in my voice. I've always said you lose like 20% when it goes through this virtual camera. And so for me, you have to I am pushing more air against my vocal cords, maybe like a singer would do, in order to get that emphasis and that point, and for it to be more exciting when somebody is listening to on a show like this or any videos that I would do. But to your point, Andy, how easy is that to just adjust, to just take the wind out of the sails of a conversation? Or sarcasm, which is like my love language. So if somebody did something in sarcasm and I was expecting them to be sarcastic, to me, you could definitely target me with AI, with ads and stuff like that, and add a little sarcasm in it. And I wouldn't probably pick up on it, because I'd be like, that's the way people around me talk. And so, yeah, it sounds a little bit abrupt or whatever, but it's also just it's all love and it's all fun and like nobody's taking that seriously. Because you could, if you knew me, if you knew that like I came from that area in New York and people who grew up in that area in New York are more likely to be sarcastic and be sarcastic with each other. Well, you can AI target ads to that part of Long Island, not that there's more, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's so easy just to, like you said, Carl, twist it. And this is something that Jyunmi brought up. Same point last Friday on the show was, it's like, Jyunmi, I think you were the one that said, I'm not worried about the full scale deepfakes because they're quick to, like the pornography, they're probably quick to say that's false, that's fake. It's the little things. It's the minor tweaks. It's the, or as we're now bringing up the facial changes, which we didn't really talk about last week, but what if all the words are exactly the same, but you change the tone, the inflection, and the facial features to it?
Yeah.
Don't you get a different message?
Yes. Oh yeah, definitely. Or along the same lines of, like you were saying, if it sounded like someone you were familiar with or who was around you, that's going to make that message sound more endearing. Yeah. Right. So it's fine manipulations, those micro aggressions or those micro facial changes. Those kinds of things are going to move you one way or another, and it can be completely subconscious. Right.
Yeah. They don't need to be. Yeah. All the stuff that we see about, like, all these significant AI changes, I think it's like a couple fact checks and, okay, that person didn't really say that. It's like the small little pieces, and it isn't just a politics. Like, I know everyone gravitates to the politics, but it doesn't have to be that. All it needs is like one person. I could see this as a Law and Order episode where, like, it's a little tweak to like a CEO saying this and he got murdered, I don't know, whatever, and then some sort of backstory. But all it is just one person said it in one way, or in a tone. It's like, I never said it that way, but you said it, but I meant it as sarcasm, but I never. But when you write, all it is I was sarcastic. Most people would, versus, no, you were telling me that I was fired. That's why I killed you. That's why we're in court now, right? Like, that really.
I mean, how many text messages have been misinterpreted?
Yes, exactly.
By everybody. Like, literally everybody that has ever texted has done a text message where they or somebody else has had to apologize and correct and say that in my head it sounded like this, and now that I reread the text, I realize that is not what I said at all. Yeah. And the other person is going to, like, or is understandably upset about maybe what that text was. And, now you're backtracking and stuff like that. So,
Junior, you said something that I want to add a term of art to, which is subliminal. Back in the day when television came out, or movies, there was this whole fear around a kind of deep fake, which was called subliminal messaging. A message inserted into the 60 frames per second, where the brain doesn't have enough time to even recognize that it saw it. But the brain does, but you don't. Like, your conscious interpretation is unaware, it's unconscious. But this subliminal messaging could actually prime you to, understand things or be influenced in such a way that, you would never know that you'd been influenced. And now imagine AI doing that at scale, inserting subliminal messages into videos. And using much greater sophistication than literally taking one of the frames and putting up a written message that your brain can interpret. No, changing those subtle features of the face and the expression. Wow, that's you just opened my mind to a whole new level of deep faking.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too, is when you talk about priming, in every grouping, right, whatever your social grouping is or whatnot, you automatically listen to, you have trust levels, right? Everything out of this person's mouth, I'm going to listen to them, because it's, whether it's a spouse or family member or something, because most of their conversation with them is probably mundane. Oh, please hand me that knife, right? But what if one of them gets primed with an advertisement, Think of it like, I forget what the exact name is, but a lot of people don't call a facial tissue a facial tissue. They call it a Kleenex. Hand me the box of Kleenex. Doesn't have to be Kleenex the brand, right? That's just a brand. But people just say, oh, yeah, hand me that. Or like when they say, when they're talking about soda.
Yeah.
Oh, I want a Coke, right? Because in that region, all soda is Coke, right?
Yeah.
And that's been
Pepsi too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So just hand me, and they're just, it doesn't have to actually be that brand. But as soon as your sphere of influence has that primed, then that's what you start receiving. Oh, it's like, oh, okay, yeah. And we're talking about language as a whole. Why is in some regions it's called soda and in some regions it's called pop, right? Why do we think of Santa Claus with red and white when before Santa Claus was green, right? In terms of like the branding colors. Well, Coca-Cola. Why is there Santa Claus? Why is Santa Claus connected with Saint Nick, connected with what? Well, because of branding, right? And with enough messaging. But with AI, it can be subtle. I was like, oh, no. I don't watch commercials. Yeah, but you don't have to watch commercials anymore. Someone has to watch a commercial, and they don't even have to watch a commercial. They can just see an ad, or they can just see its insert into the language. Someone just starts saying, oh, hand me a Coke, when they mean hand me soda. Just saying it, just expanding upon those lines. I don't want to go any doom and gloom, but this is all to reiterate Carl's point of you must pay better attention. And you must critically think about all the information that's coming into you now, which can be it's going to be a little more taxing, but it's something that we have to do to close that gap between society and technology.
And as more of these tools are put into our hands, right? Like everything that was done by 11 Labs, just by 11 Labs, their app and so on, it's so easy. It becomes easier and easier and easier and easier. Sora. And I think it's funny because we talk about, regulation, battles with courts. I'm like, it doesn't matter, because if this country doesn't do it, Canada doesn't do it, United States, sure. I'm like, there's a whole list of countries that have open source models that can do whatever they want with it. And you can't stop them. Are you going to take them to the international court? It's not going to happen. So it's like, well, it's kind of the world we live in now. So very, very interesting whenever I hear about deepfakes and so on.
Does anybody have anything updated about Claude? There's been so much examination in the world of AI, and we did a show on, has Claude finally arrived? Is there any news that anybody's noticed, or any new functionality or feature application that we want to update?
Kind of reading my mind there, Andy, because that was one of the next things I was going to bring up was our show this week on Claude. And it's not that I personally have something new, although I have really continued to enjoy working with artifacts. But I want to give a shout out to Ethan Malik, who puts out is it weekly? I guess it might be weekly newsletter, and it's called Small Improvements. And the one that came out yesterday on July 4th is called Gradually, Then Suddenly, Upon the Threshold. And in that, he always has, I always just recommend people going to check out and subscribing. It's free, by the way. You can support him. There's ways to support him through Substack, but it's a free publication, and I cannot recommend that enough for people to do. But he talks about 3.5 and talks about some of the different use cases he did. Now, I think one of the things that's really cool that I have not played with is finances. So he talks about, I don't give his whole thing away here, but he's talking about how he used artifacts, and he uploaded an income statement for a small business prompt where he's like, here's an Excel of my startup's finances, make it a dashboard. And then it does. But then what that in itself, I probably would have been like, oh yeah. But then he says he did sensitivity analysis for key assumptions. Then he ran a Monte Carlo simulation. Then he said, assuming a normal distribution, what are the outcomes? And then he went on to do another thing and ended up with 3 or 4 or 5 different things that artifacts quickly produced. And of course, his point was, hey, you could upload these sort of like financial statements and get really, really fast results, whether it be a dashboard or running Monte Carlo simulations to figure out whether the business is going to be profitable. I hadn't thought about it in that frame yet. I hadn't really gone down that, but I'm interested to, because I've been keeping a line item budget since 2017, like every single thing that goes in and out of the house, although it takes some work, I always found it to be much, much more helpful. Plus, there's a little bit of recognition that goes into like writing it down, having to say, oh, that happened, that expense happened, and coming to grips with it, right? It's always been a great way for my family to keep track of budgeting. But I'm interested to use that with a tool like Claude. And I'll be honest, I'm more comfortable personally using it with Claude than I am OpenAI, just for the sake of how the models are set up. Because obviously there's sensitive data in that, financial statements that I would have, the line item statements, the budgets. So I don't know that I will. Maybe I'll wash it a little bit just to, protect myself or whatever. But I am more comfortable using that in a tool like Claude than I am with OpenAI. Not that I think there's anything nefarious going on. The way the models are set up with the constitutional AI, for me personally, I would be more like what Etymologic is. So 2 things there. One, think about, farther expand than what even we talked about. And now even think about how it can help you with financial stuff or uploading data sets, which is a very cool way to do it, and having it build visualizations for you. And then 2, go check out Etymologic's and sign up for his newsletter. Again, that's called Small Improvements. Well, is it called Small Improvements? No, I apologize. That's the subtitle. I knew that was wrong. It's called One Useful Thing. I apologize. It's called One Useful Thing. The title of the one that came out yesterday is Gradually, Then Suddenly, Upon the Threshold. And the subtitle was Small Improvements Can Lead to Big Changes. So my apologies on that. I knew that was wrong. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I can't wait to go actually back and go play with that actually and try some data.
Have you, there was one thing I was listening to in terms of the difference. I saw the Claude prompt, like the hidden prompt every single time. It's retrieving from the actual product versus the API. So it's interesting that the output obviously from the API versus the output from the tool, the Claude tool, is going to be very different. And I don't know if you've been using one or the other more frequently, but it's very neat to, when I'm using one in one format and then using another, there is even asking very different, like whether it's in Perplexity or whether it's in a custom build. Yeah, the outputs are very, I from an API perspective, 4.0 is very, very good. Mm-hmm. When you choose in ChatGPT, sometimes you're like, what's going on here? Yeah. But it's interesting to see what the huge prompt it has as a way to train it, or to make sure it's usable for the masses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think that's a good call out too, before we wrap up here, and I want to bring up Cisco's comment too, but just making the call out that, what you see inside of ChatGPT and what you would see through an API are not necessarily, even if you're using 4.0, are not going to be identical. It's just a good reminder for people that, just like Claude 2, they're trying to provide you a very friendly, easy user experience, and there's some give and take with that. Like pretty much any tool that you're going to use. If you use Wix to build a website, you're going to give up some customization. There's no doubt about it. But you could also stand up a website in 30 minutes. So it goes both ways, right? Versus maybe a WordPress or something that's custom built. So it's just a good reminder too, from what you're saying, Carl, that it's not necessarily going to be the same thing, because you have more control on the API side of, creativity and different things like that to affect how that outcome. And you don't have that in just your ChatGPT interface. A long time ago, they said it was set at 0.7. Somebody said it was set at 0.7. I don't even know if that's true anymore, because my guess is now that it's actually going and using 3.5 at times, or 4 and then 4.0. And it's probably much, much more complex than just saying, oh, their creativity set at 0.7 for everybody. And it's probably not the case.
I'm really curious about the effect of multimodal on everything too, like the API versus just regular ChatGPT. Now that everyone's going to get the vision, the hearing capability, whenever that is, it doesn't matter. In 6 months, we'll all have it in one form or another. So it's, like, how will that play when you're actually using ChatGPT versus an API that you built, or, built into systems, and, how good is it there? How good is it? I'm very curious to see where that goes to.
Yeah. I want to bring this up really quick from Cisco. And Carl, you may be able to talk to this a little bit. So he said, love Claude immensely. Would you guys consider deep dive on structured prompts in Google AI Studio as they have updated the size of their context window? Beth's not here today, but she would probably be able to speak more to this as well. But does anybody here? I mean, I don't personally have as much of Google AI Studio that I work with, but does anybody feel like that's something we could pull into a conversation? I kind of feel like that's in your area, Carl, a little bit.
I think we can. Like, I've been in it. And it's funny when he mentioned that I was actually in, like, one of my tabs is Google AI Studio. I think the problem we have now is that I'm not going to pay $30 for Claude, not going to pay $20 for ChatGPT. I'm not going to pay whatever the cost for Gemini, right? It's just like, you can't pay that all three of them all forever. Like, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. So I always find it fun. It's like, oh, I'm going to cancel my ChatGPT account. It's like, yeah, but when you get voice, are you going to re-up? Like,
right.
And then when Claude comes out, are you going to cancel? Like, it makes no sense to pick one. So it's fast. Anyway, in terms of the question of the 2 million context, I haven't put in that 2 million, like, to try it out yet. Like, what I really want to do is, like, put a, like, I don't know, whatever long video, and
that would do it. Yeah, totally.
Usually the test. So
put in one of our longest videos ever, and you might hit
still not long enough,
or at least
right? Still not long enough. You'd probably need a Lex Friedman interview, right? And then put that in and see, because it's YouTube. I would imagine it would probably take it, and then, you know, when did this happen? When did this happen? When did we know that kind of test? But
we, you know, look, we haven't done a Google AI show in a bit, so I mean, we can certainly. I think it's a good suggestion, Cisco. Thank you. Justin was saying he agrees, by the way. Yeah, I think that's something we can definitely, you know, regardless one way or the other, we can get something on the calendar as far as talking about that longer context window. Because truthfully, I haven't played with it in a while either. I kind of tested it out maybe a few months ago, and haven't really gotten to it. And then just last thing here, Cisco says, I tried to cancel my Google AI account, but you lose access to your computer at night. So it got me. Yeah, I mean, we all feel that. I feel that pain of which AI tools did you put the money to? And it feels like that monthly dollar for me keeps going up.
It's going up.
Doesn't help that we're on a show and we're all trying to use all the tools all the time, which is nearly impossible. But
you have to Runway, like, you have to use Runway, then you have to use Midjourney, then you have to use Pika, then we have to try all these tools that is like $10, $5, $10, and you're like,
go to the googleaistudio.com and support us. Our show, the sooner we will get to having a little extra income coming in to support the show, which will all go back to probably all the bills that we already pay to run the show. Surprise, it's not free. So we love doing this, but we're also happy to grow it just a little bit more and try to help ourselves out a little bit. So go to the googleaistudio.com if you want to see any of the past episodes. If you'd like to subscribe at any of the platforms, you can certainly do that. And we will have our next edition of our newsletter going out this Sunday. So if you want to get in before that next edition comes out, all you have to do is go to thegoogleaistudio.com and you can sign up for it right there. And that will land in your inbox about 7 a.m. on Sunday morning. So that's only episode or edition number 5. So get in while the get-in's good, while it's early. And I think you'll be really pleased with it. And of course, if you're not, we want to know that too. So we'll wrap that up for today. I kind of talked about it yesterday, but for the next 2 weeks, we have all sorts of interesting shows coming up. I don't even know if I can get to all of them, honestly, but we have all sorts of stuff coming up. So go check out, if you want to, you can go to our YouTube channel and you can see like upcoming episodes on there. You can also do the same thing on LinkedIn. So if you're curious about what's coming up over the next 2 weeks, you can go there and you'll see upcoming episodes. They're all updated and live in there right now. So that's it. I hope everybody has a great weekend, and we will see you guys back here on Monday for another great show. Until then.
Aloha.